Can you please pray for Mallory and Keenan? My daughter's friend got tested for COVID 2 days ago. We're waiting for the results to come back.
Sounds good. Hey guys, I'm gonna go downstairs. So yeah, I've got one too before I go downstairs. My coach, Tony Terry, you guys may know him. He and his wife have COVID as well.
Oh no.
But I think he might be on the upswing from what I could gather from the Facebook post, but they have it. So pray for them. I'll see you in a minute. I'm going downstairs.
Okay.
Any other prayer requests?
It's Chris. My grandfather went in the hospital last night with congestive heart failure, so just be praying for them.
And for Beverly, she's still fighting her pneumonia.
And Beverly would like to add a prayer request.
Hey, Beverly.
Hey, my best friend of 30 plus years lost her father, and he was positive for coronavirus. And now she and her husband have it. And so we need to send some prayers there. She attended Hebron way many years ago. I'm dating myself, 54. She attended Hebron way back when it was brother, I can't even think. Lucas, when brother Lucas was a minister. She attended Hebron back then years and years ago. But she's had a hard time dealing with her father dying, and then she found it out. So definitely need prayers for healing and comfort and moral support. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, our cousin Hope in North Carolina, she had a heart attack and then a stroke. She was on a ventilator, but she's now off the ventilator, so keep her in your prayers.
One of our favorite cousins, Janice.
What was that?
Beverly and I, it's one of our cousins, Hope.
And Hope and Linda's the sister of Hope. They were always like our favorite cousins.
I have favorites. Okay, let's go ahead. If there's no more, we'll open up in prayer. Father, just thank you for this time we can gather together, Father, even if we're not in the same room. It's just an opportunity to have a gathering, Father, to come together and worship you, to study your word. Father, just lift up those names. There's a lot that, with the virus that's going around, Father, but also just the general illness and things that plague our bodies, Father, but they don't plague us spiritually as much as physically. Father, be your will. Heal those wounds, heal our community, heal our state and our nation. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 So today's lesson is on, taxes. Not kind of like the most sexy thing that we can talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So today's Sunday school lesson, I don't know, can you see that? Can you see the slide?
Yeah, we see it good.
Do you see the slide or you see me?
Yeah.
I see both.
I see both.
Awesome. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the one bad word, taxes.
Hey Rusty, if you start your presentation, it'll go bigger screen. We can see Outlook right now. I mean, PowerPoint.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, but.
So, okay, I got that, but then I can't do both at the same time. I'm not coordinated enough. Let me start with a little story. So I went to Texas, had a good friend, his name was Lauren. Lauren and I hunted a lot. And one of the things we do is we go with Lauren's dad. Lauren's dad was a character. He was kind of weird. When I first met his dad, Lauren told me, he said, don't ever ride with dad in his truck. He said, if we ever go anywhere, don't ever ride with them in a boat. And whenever we go somewhere, he took his own truck, he took his own boat. And later on, I found out that Lauren's dad hadn't paid taxes in like 20 years. He got in a little bit of trouble. He felt the IRS stole some money from him. So for the last 20 years, he just basically, you know, owed the government a bunch of money. You know, just hid everything. His homes didn't pay taxes. His income didn't pay taxes. And this kind of, I don't think it's that totally strange. I do think there are a lot of people in the United States who don't pay their taxes. Do you know people like that? Anybody?
Yep. Denial.
Al Capone.
Al Capone.
What about you, Rusty? Do you know anybody like that?
Yeah, Lauren's dad just didn't pay taxes, and Stacy and I know another person. They, you know, when it comes to taxes, they don't do what they should do, and that's what really this lesson is about: is how do you handle those types of situations? So we're going to look at a set of verses. We're going to look at first Mark chapter 12, verses 14 through 17. Let me share that if I can. Just muted myself. Maybe if somebody could read that. Mark 12, 14 through 17.
Right now. Say Mark what?
Mark 12, 14 through 17.
I got it. Teacher, they said, we know how honest you are. You are impartial and don't play favorites. You teach the way of God truthfully. Now tell us, is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or shouldn't we? Jesus saw through their hypocrisy and said, why are you trying to trap me? Show me a Roman coin and I'll tell you. When they handed it to him, he asked, whose picture and title are stamped on it? Caesar, they replied. Well, then Jesus said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give to God what belongs to God. His reply completely amazed them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people remember those verses. Those are really classic, especially when you look at the last verse. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar. And if you look at the idea behind that, there were three kinds of taxes that a person would have to pay at that time. First was a property tax. If you own property, you had to pay proceeds from that property. Then you also had to pay an income tax, and that was 10% of all your income. And then you had a life tax. A life tax was a denarius for each person, man, woman, and child. If you lived, you paid a tax. And we look at that now, we think, wow, you know, that's just like the federal government. I mean, you pay sales taxes, you pay property tax, and everybody kind of, you know, regardless, there's just all these taxes going on. And what the Jewish people really didn't like, they didn't like this denarius. They didn't like this idea of, okay, you know, I got to pay for just living. Even if they don't earn any income, I still have to pay. And Jesus knew that they were trying to trap him. They knew it's like, okay, look, you know, hey, why do we have to pay taxes? This, you know, this is a bad thing. Nobody wants to pay taxes, especially for little kids and women who don't earn income. They don't have any property. And Jesus said, okay, give me a coin. And on that coin was that denarius, the image of Caesar. And he said, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar. You know, a lot of people look at that and they say, okay, well, you know, Jesus was, you know, he just didn't want to cause trouble. But really, today's lesson is about two things. It's about, one, having a relationship. That's a relationship with God and a relationship with government. And then the second one is, you know, having proper planning. So if I were to say in general, how do you guys look at paying taxes? I mean, what comes up whenever you see on your paycheck all the amount of money you pay in taxes?
I don't even think about it. I just know it comes out. It's part of it, you know. What's the two things that's guaranteed in life? Death and taxes. So I just deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm with you there, Brett.
You don't think about it, just pay it.
Unfortunately, I think of how those tax dollars are being spent, and it makes me kind of aggravated.
Okay, so you look at taxes and you kind of get this like, gut feeling.
Well, Rusty, if you compare the tithe to the tax, are you more concerned about where your tithe money goes than you are with your tax money? Because if you had to write that tax check out every week or every month, you'd be more concerned about how it's spent. That's why you hear a lot of people complaining about, well, my tithe money's going here and my tithe money's going there. I think that you have more of a personal connection to it if you actually know where it's going and see it being pulled out.
Yeah, and I think you pulled out an interesting thing, Kevin. One of the differences in the tithe is we write that check out.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, maybe we don't think about it as part of our paycheck, but Kevin, you have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Every quarter. That's probably pretty hard.
Well, the idea behind taxes coming out of your paycheck is so you don't see it. You don't feel that pain. So,
and like you say, Kevin's a little different being self-employed. He pays, like you say, quarterly for all the employees and everything. So when he sees that big check come out, he's like, ah!
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing. It's like, oh man, I have to write out a check. I have to, like, self-inflicted punishment.
And not to compare the tithes to the taxes. That's just you feel the money coming out when you do that.
Right. And that's what this is about, because in the first part of this first day, they talk about, it's like, okay, let's turn this around a little bit. Let's turn this around about paying taxes. What happens if you didn't have a job?
Well, if you don't have a job, do you pay taxes, or you become a beneficiary of the taxpayers?
Well, I mean, some people look at it. Some people look at it as like, if I don't have a job, I don't have to pay taxes.
You pay sales tax.
Oh, that's true. But we're kind of blessed with a job, right?
Yeah.
So taxes are kind of like part of a job.
Taxes to me used to be like you add it to the bills and you pay it with all the bills. Since I had all this medical drama and finally got approved for Social Security and such, as soon as that Social Security check hits my account, that's the first thing I pull out is my tithes.
Yeah.
Then I go through the budget items, and you know what? I've had, had to go on Social Security disability. I've had a cut of probably 60 to 70% of my salary, but I'm not missing it. I'm tithing in faith, and somehow everything's getting paid and done.
Yep.
I think it's honestly easier to write my check to my tithe than to pay my taxes. Because sometimes I feel like I know that God said to do both. I'm not saying that I don't like to pay tax. Sometimes I don't like to pay taxes because I don't think that it's fair. I will tell you this. I'll tell this story. I paid taxes faithfully for 20 years as a banker. And then whenever I left my job as a banker, I went to become a nurse. And because I had made too much money, I did not qualify for health insurance because there was no Obamacare back then. I didn't qualify for any kind of student aid. I didn't qualify. I went to nursing school with no health insurance. My first patient was a respiratory MRSA patient, and I wasn't allowed to reap any of the benefits of the money I had paid. So when you want to feel burnt, that is a great example of why some people feel like you're not going to get anything for your taxes until, you absolutely have nothing.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that you feel more comfortable writing a check for God to use than you do the government?
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah. And what the lesson stresses in the first day is, because we're blessed with a job, we should look at it as like, okay, we have a blessing, we should pay our taxes. It's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an analogy. Is Brett, are you still there?
Yeah, we're still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Who do we pick on for talking about getting a boat? Is that Eric?
Yep.
So Eric, let's say, we're given a job or blessed with a job. Let's say somebody wants to bless you with a boat. You like that?
Do I have to pay taxes on it?
Well, no, but what you have to do is you have to maintain it. So you got to
You
go
have
out there
to pay tax to purchase the boat and put it in your name.
Yeah. So somebody's going to give you a boat, just like somebody's going to give you a job. And the only condition of that boat is you got to go out there and you got to wash it. You got to clean it. You got to maintain it. You got to put gas in it.
Yeah, I do that.
You do that?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how we should look at a blessing of a job. If we're blessed with this job, and a lot of times we have really good jobs, we just have to pay the tax on it, which is, we have to pay something to the federal government. We have to pay to maintain. We have to pay to, make sure it's running properly. That was my analogy. I had to sneak in the boat thing. So moving on to day 2, one of the things we want to talk about is all government is God's government. And, there's a set of verses there to look at. This is Romans chapter 13, 3 through 4. Would somebody read, but I want you to read Romans 13, 1 through 7. Can somebody read that? Do you see what's on my screen?
No.
Okay. Shane is not working. You see it now?
No.
Nope. Okay, can somebody read Romans 13, 1 through 7?
Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except for that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and he will commend you, for he is God's servant to do you good. If you do wrong, be afraid. He does not bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoers. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also because of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants, who give their full time to governing. Give everyone what you owe him. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor.
So if you take apart the first set of verses, let everyone be subject to governing authorities. Okay. I mean, I don't know how people feel about that, because some people it's like, well, not all governments are good governments. We could probably look at times in history and we could say, there were some pretty bad governments. Does that say that we don't have the right to rebel against a bad government?
Say that again.
When it says in Romans 13:1, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. God set those authorities up. Do we have a right to rebel against those authorities?
No.
No.
What if it's a bad government?
God still set it up.
Bible, I mean, I would think Moses would fall under the category of rebelling against the government.
Only because God told him to.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
Rusty, don't touch your face again.
The what? Oh,
Touch your face. The government said not to.
In a Charleston Heston type voice.
Touch mine too.
so what if we say instead of in 1301, let everyone be subject to governing authorities? What if we replace governing authorities with the police?
It's the same thing, but
What was that?
isn't it the same thing?
Yeah, it is the same thing. And we're supposed to obey the police, right?
Yes.
What happens if we just say, okay, look, policeman comes up, turns his sirens on, we're just not going to obey him? Is that going to go well for us?
We might end up on a taser report on Walton Johnson.
love God's people not following government. I mean, you can look and find people that ended up in jail because they were, I mean, even Jesus himself I consider to be not a,
He was a rebel.
that pleased the government. They were mad at him because he was, because of his claims of who he was. All I'm saying, all I'm trying to make y'all think about is the fact that we do have to use God's word and the things that he's given us to determine what is following. And also prioritizing God ahead of the government. Because if you want to put your priorities in the correct order, God would have to come above government. So there are examples in the Bible of got in trouble because they were following God, because God and the government weren't going, hand in hand. They weren't in line. So just a thought.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Holly. I mean, I'm going to go back to that opening story. The guy, he would never hunt with his good gun. He could never ride with. He would never let anybody be in his vehicle. He lived in constant fear that there was going to be a knock on the door and they were going to try to arrest him for not paying his taxes. And his wife lived with that. And actually, Lauren said he grew up like that. He said he grew up with this constant fear. It's like, oh my gosh, my parents are going to be, they're going to go to jail because of this tax evasion. I mean, we're not supposed to be in a position where we're afraid because of not paying our taxes, not doing what the government wants us to do. There's a difference between standing up to a bad government, standing up to bad people, but also there's obeying these superiors that we have, like the police, or even a firefighter. It's like, hey, look, firefighter comes to dude, you got to move your car to in front of the fire hydrant. It's like, wow, why do I have to move my vehicle? I can park it wherever I want. It's like, okay, but you're not helping yourself. You're not helping other people. There's a reason why those people are in authority. Does that make sense?
And we put these people in authority, by the way. We live in a culture where we don't have to rebel against our government quite like some other countries end up rebelling against the tyrants, and it's more than just taxes when it comes to that point.
Yeah.
And I think from my experience, had I not been in a situation where I paid taxes so faithfully and then all of a sudden could not reap any of the benefits or use any of the programs, I think I might see things a little different. So if you've ever been in a situation where the government did not help you at all, it's easy for you to judge people that don't pay taxes, or if you've never felt that before, you can't understand what that feels like.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, our government's set up, it shouldn't be for
It is
helping
set up to
everybody, helping everybody out. It's set up for our protection and our infrastructure. And we need to remember that when we're paying our taxes, that's what our taxes should be going for, and to help the people that are really in need. I mean, they got so many programs that they overwhelm our system.
I only needed health insurance for 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when it's things like that. I mean, I have a different opinion on taxes. I pay them and I hate them. But like I said earlier, so when you have to write that check out, like you did, Stacy, it hurts, and you don't see where it's going. So.
It only hurt me after I couldn't use it. It didn't bother me until I got into the position where I needed.
Yeah, and it's the same end result. You know, you see your tax money's not going where we think it should go, I guess, or where we feel like it's most beneficial.
To me, the only place I thought it should go is when I needed it to me, and I couldn't.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and that comes down to where we, we think we write that tax check out, and just like the tithe check, where does it need to go? You know, it's our opinion. We become selfish when we start worrying about where it's going. And in your situation, when it came down to it, you know, I can sympathize with it. You know, you thought, well, wait, where's mine? You know, Social Security.
I've been paying all these years.
Yeah, Social Security. You know, what about all those people? You know, we're forced to pay Social Security in, and then when it comes time for us to draw it, there's nothing left because they've given it out. You know, they've doled it out to people. So, you know, that's your situation. You know, is very Stacy. It's the same thing. So. You know, where did it come? Where did it go? Who was? Oh Lord! Stacy just changed into Jennifer.
Some of those taxes that I pay into the system are coming to me because I do have Social Security disability, but they're taking it based on what I paid into Social Security.
But listen, Beverly, I don't mind giving to people who need. I'm saying when I needed, it wasn't available because the system is set up that if you are not poor and you are not on it for a long time, you can't get on it.
Yeah. I mean, we're on the same page.
I've worked over 33 years. So when I went to Social Security, I basically laid out my case and documents to them, and so I got it approval the first time, which is never happens. But you know, I felt for the longest time to do that it was like a government handout. And then, you know, I had it shown to me that it wasn't a handout. I paid Social Security wages, and my disability is based on the taxes that I paid in. So that's the only thing I can say in my defense as far as taxes. I have to pay taxes on that Social Security disability. So it's double tax. I got taxed when it went into Social Security, and I'm getting taxed again for receiving the monthly benefits. That's probably one of the good stories about tax. But I'm not getting your taxes or anybody else's taxes. It's simply what I paid into Social Security that's making it run.
But in the end, we all pay taxes. And one of the things the lesson is stressing is, you know, when they were trying to trap Jesus, it was a situation where they're saying we shouldn't be paying these Romans because these Romans are bad people. And what Jesus said is, you know, this is, you want to make things easy for yourself, then you pay taxes. The Jews at that time were not going to beat the Romans. There's no way we're going to beat a policeman. We're going to beat the IRS. We just need to understand that this is our duty and this is our relationship with our government that we have. And just like if we make a loan, we have to pay back the loan. You know, we're going to get some good things. We may not always like it, but we're going to get some good things from it. And that's what, you know, it says in Romans 13. It's like, you know, things will go well with you. If you have a good relationship, things are going to go well. If you want to cheat the government and constantly live in fear, or if you want to not pay your taxes and constantly live in fear, that's going to be on you. On day 3, it talks about don't let the tail wag the dog. Obviously, the guy who wrote this lesson is a financial expert, and he counsels people on finances. Is that me?
We've entered this twilight zone, huh?
And
Mine doesn't have music, but that is kind of cool.
what day 3, 4, and 5 are about is this guy who's a tax expert talking about how to use your tax deductions wisely. One of the first things you have to come to grips with whenever you own your business, and Kevin can talk about this, other people who file their own business, Stacy and I do. You can buy a bunch of stuff and you can try to write it off. That's not always the best strategy. Using how you use the tax deduction that the government allows can get you into a little bit of a trouble. And he talks about this. There's not a lot of scripture because honestly, I don't think the scripture deals with the U.S. tax code and itemized deductions. But he talks about just using your money wisely. I had this happen to me once. I had a guy I was talking to him about his business, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, my accountant says I can go out there and buy a new big truck and I can write it off. I can only buy so many trucks a year." I don't know if anybody has dealt with this stuff before. Maybe Kevin has. There's a big temptation to take these deductions, but these deductions aren't always, sound financial management. Does anybody have
It's not. I mean, you get depreciation on a brand new vehicle, so I mean that goes way fast. But no, that's not the way to do it. It's not smart. There's a lot of people that think that way. The government's tightened down on how much we can write off. So they're wise to that. People have been doing it for years.
So every single one of us have these decisions to make about how we do our taxes, and what he tries to bring is that wise use of money. So if Kevin goes out there and says, "Denise, I'm gonna go out there and buy a $60,000 truck," but it's okay, I get to write it off. Does that mean you don't pay $60,000? No, you just don't pay a certain amount of that $60,000. You still pay for that truck.
Yeah, you still pay for it.
Now,
and plus you're using it for work, so you're using it. It's not for pleasure. So you may be able to use it for pleasure, but to drive around. But it still becomes a work vehicle.
It is a legitimate expense.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. Don't let the tail wag the dog. Don't go out there and make a bunch of purchases just to write them off. Now let's get a little closer to home. That was a business aspect. Some people, because this happens in Louisiana, I want to go out there and buy $600,000 house. I can only afford a $200,000 house, but if I buy a bigger house, I get to write off a bigger tax deduction. Would that be a good idea?
Nope.
But no, I mean at the end of the year, if I paid $60,000, I'd be able to write off. If I paid a $600,000 house, the mortgage and all the taxes on that, I'd be able to write off every year $10,000. Would that be a good financial decision?
No.
No.
You got to pay the rent.
Yeah, eventually I got to pay the note. I can't afford a $500,000 house or a $600,000 house. But some people do look at it that way. The more I spend, the more I get to write off. The more I write off, the better it is. Well, that's the tail wagging the dog. And he talks about that in lesson 4, but he talks about it in an interesting way. He talks about this couple that approached him and they said, "Okay, look, here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to give $10,000 in missions. You want to give $10,000 in missions with us?" Basically what this couple asked. And the guy says, "Well, no, I already have this $10,000 write-off on this piece of property." It's an interesting idea. If I do write off something, should the write-off be based on something I'm purchasing for me, or should it be something for the church?
Or any charitable organization.
Or any charitable organization, because it's the same. I mean, itemized deductions, if you ever deal with it, doesn't matter if it comes from real estate taxes or your interest deduction, or if it comes from a charitable donation to a church. $10,000 is $10,000. He makes a point of saying the $10,000 for the missions would be better than the $10,000, you know, just individual personal property. I know this is really interesting, fun stuff. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up and have any fun. Anybody have $10,000?
What are your thoughts on taxes, Rusty? You seem very pro-tax.
Ooh. I think you have to pay taxes. Is there a lot of tax money that's wasted? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I can stop paying what I pay. Just like I may not agree with, oh, touch my face again. I may not agree with, you know, the speed limit on a road, but I can't.
But you still.
Yeah.
Still speed.
Speed limit.
How our money works all together. However, it kind of diverts away from taxes back to our giving. But you know, when we think about our money as being all God's in the first place, and we're being managers of it, you know, that's really what we want. The way we want to look at it. You know, what is the best thing for the kingdom? And you know, we can do a whole lot more for others if we have the ability to give directly to a charitable organization or church or whatever it might be, versus sending it to a mortgage company and all that interest going there. It just goes a lot further. You know, he said the net impact on that one purchase there with the land thing was, you know, what was it? $90,000 net gain versus looking at it from a write-off perspective was a whole lot less.
Yeah, and that's what he talks about in day 5, is setting up basically a plan where all throughout the year you're planning how you want those deductions to go. And it's like, that's probably not the most Christian sermon to have, but thinking about just like you would plan to spend your money wisely, you should plan to give your charitable donations wisely. You know, should it be to missions or should it be to interest? And he talks about this complicated, not too complicated, but he talks about this scheme that, I don't want to say, this program that he uses to where you do that. You plan out your deductions so you use them for God's kingdom instead of just for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, those are all government sanctioned too. I mean, those options are provided for the government. We just have to go figure out, you know, what is the best course, what would benefit the kingdom more, how we set up our giving.
And there are tax accountants and tax attorneys. That's what they do. They just sit there and try to save as much money for their clients as possible. They'll sit there and they'll go through all the tax code, everything. But what this guy is saying is, hey, is it really about, you know, getting the most for you or getting the most for God? And that's this whole pie and this whole wedge thing that he talks about through all these lessons is, how do you spend your money? And today's lesson is, how do you spend, you know, your money? Well, there's taxes, and if you do have taxes, how do you use those deductions? Give to your church, give to those charitable organizations. Don't just try to use it all for yourself, which basically, you know, is the summary of the lesson. And the second part of it too is, and make sure you pay your taxes and you're not cheating, because if you do, you're going to be miserable, because you're going to constantly feel like you're looking over your shoulders. You know, am I going to get a visit from the IRS? Am I going to get audited? And that's not a way to live. A good way.
And I think it's interesting, Rusty, because you and I are like, I think God put us together for a reason, because I have no problem with the tithing and you have no problem with the taxes. So we're like the yin and the yang.
Yeah. Taxes and tithe and yin and yang. Yeah.
To me, tithing, nothing like taxes. Can't outgive God.
The taxes is an obedience thing, or the tithing, or obedience.
It is. You're right. They're both obedience. They're both acts of obedience.
And they're for the greater good too. I mean, I like to have nice roads to drive on, and you know, the things that government and protection, know that we're not going to, like you talked about, being attacked by an outside government. It's good to know we have a military in place that we're paying for through taxes. Those are good things.
Yes.
And you can't do all that yourself. I mean, you can't go out there and build your own roads. You can't go out there and police yourself with the money that you give. But collectively, we can. That's why we have government. Collectively, we can provide for things that I couldn't do individually. If I didn't pay taxes, you know, I could probably say, well, you know, I guess all the money I could make go for a road, but it only go in front of my house. Or I could provide for protection, but I would just have a bunch of guns, but that wouldn't protect me from a country with nuclear weapons. I mean, I can't do those things. That's why I pay taxes. I can't individually do those things, but we can together.
You know, the police occasionally run into these, what they call themselves sovereign citizens. They don't agree with paying taxes, and they don't agree with following the rules set up by the government. So how do you feel about those people who don't participate in the government system but use all the services provided by the government?
First, I think they're wackos. I think they're wackos who are always wackos, and then they found an excuse, this sovereign government thing, to go out there and kind of raise their little flag and say, look, you know, I don't have to do this because I think some people are always looking for a way out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah.
Anybody want to be a sovereign citizen? Get pulled over by the police and say, I'm not a citizen of the United States, so you can't pull me over?
Well, they are a citizen of the United States. They just don't feel like they need to follow the regulations. It's almost like libertarian, really, really far right.
And if we all did that, and let's say 20% of the population didn't pay taxes, that would leave more people, 80% to pay more taxes. If 50% of people didn't pay taxes and the other 50% would pay. Well, if 80% did, 20% would be paying everything. I mean, you can't have people constantly shirking their duty.
And you know, right now we're all glad that everyone pays taxes, because the government is doing what they can to keep us at home so that we can self-quarantine. That's all tax money, and you know, we're benefiting from it. So yeah.
Yeah, and if we, you know, we're not doing their thing, this whole pandemic thing in the United States would affect a whole lot more of us and much worse.
Yes.
And we need to understand, a lot of people don't understand is, they say, well, I pay my taxes, you work for me. You tell the police, you work for me, I pay my taxes. Well, sales taxes aren't exactly what we're referring to, because a lot of people don't actually pay taxes. Like the people Stacey was talking about earlier, you know, they're more underprivileged. They don't have a good job. They still pay taxes, but it's not those. Most sales taxes are local and state taxes. So they're not putting a lot into the federal coffers when they are paying, air quote, paying their taxes. So that everybody's participating, but to what level, I guess?
No. If you don't pay very much in taxes, you are eligible for a lot of
Now, I'm not saying you're not eligible for it. I'm just saying that you're not everyone is paying, like Rusty was saying, the 20%. You know,
Yeah.
you said, yeah, I mean, not everyone's paying, not everyone falls into that 20%. So,
Yeah, I think the point is that we just need to participate at the level that.
yeah, you get me off on taxes and I'll just keep going. We're off the lesson for sure. So.
Well, the government has set up a certain percentages based off your income of what you can do or what you should do, and we need to be doing what that dictates. And if you're at a lower income bracket where you don't pay any taxes, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And that goes with the first part of the lesson. It's like, man, if you're blessed with a job where you make, I say, $500,000 a year, you shouldn't be complaining that you pay taxes. Here's somebody who makes, $8.50 an hour. Like, they're the ones who should be complaining. It's like, yeah, I'm paying taxes. You're making $500,000 a year. You got houses, you got cars, you got all this stuff. Your taxes, yeah, they may seem like a curse, but that goes with all the blessings that you have. It's like, be thankful that you make $500,000 a year.
I don't think everyone believes that taxes are a curse, but I think that there are true situations where the government does not work for everyone that has done what they were supposed to do.
Jacob's trying to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I only make a small movie clip like every 3 months, quarterly. I can't complain for my taxes because I don't make enough to even. Yes. So.
We didn't catch that, Jacob. You might go off your speaker and use your headset. It might help.
Can you hear me? I was just saying that I make a small check, and so I claim exempt for my taxes because I don't make enough money.
So Jacob, you don't pay a lot of taxes because you don't make enough money?
Well, I claim exempt on
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what Rusty was saying. So, yeah.
And that's what you should do because that's what the government has set, the way that the government has set it up. You just follow what the government has set up and you're good.
And no one's complaining about that. Like I don't mind helping those who need help. That is not the complaint. The complaint is if you need help, you can't get it.
And that's an issue when the system's so big. Everybody knows we have broken parts of our government. You look around, there's broken pieces everywhere. But what today's lesson stresses is, it's a relationship, pay your taxes, do what you're supposed to do, be a good citizen. God set these situations up so we would prosper, not so we would be punished. And, again, like these different pie wedges, these are our financial responsibilities that we have. Taxes is probably not the funnest thing to talk about. Definitely it's not. Unless we want to really not have a Sunday school lesson, we sit here and write for an hour. But understanding that the Bible says, it's something we have to do. Can't rebel against it. It's not going to be profitable in the long run. I think is the lesson. Any other closing comments? We're up against our time limit, I think.
I guess one thing I might add is, they talked about in the lesson, evil governments. We kind of brought it up a little bit, but when our government right now, there is funding of abortions, possibly through our government. There's things that aren't good that happen, and but
and
still,
how does God feel about that?
Yeah, you know that those things are against what He wants. However, we still have to pay our taxes. That is the government that's over us, and we see examples of that where God did things through governments that were not good. Nebuchadnezzar, back.
Nehemiah.
Yeah, he did good things for even evil rulers sometimes. And yeah, the Roman Empire, thank goodness that they were the way they were, because we have something to celebrate Sunday and Palm Sunday, because they were, in essence, a bad government that killed a innocent man that died for all the sins of the world. So God can do good things through a bad government sometimes, and well, always he can.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Romans. I mean, the Romans. It had to be at that time because Paul was a Roman citizen, which meant he was granted access all throughout the known world at that time. The Romans had had created a system of roads, transportation, a government. I mean, it just didn't happen that, it's like, okay, God said, well, Jesus can come anytime. Jesus came at a time where the Romans were in power because the Romans had implemented what they had done. Yeah, and the Jews had to pay taxes to the Romans, and they hated it. Just like we have in the United States. I mean, we have a lot of benefits. We have a lot of things that we can celebrate for our government. They're not all good, but it's part of God's plan. God's plan is throughout everything that exists, and that's one of the things that we have to recognize, even when it doesn't have the pleasant parts to it. God's in control of everything. Okay, if there's no other points, is like 9:45, we'll close.
Church, we gotta get to church.
Gotta get to church. Does anybody want to, I guess, Brett, you'll set up the teaching for next week, and anything else? Maybe if we want to do any other Sunday school events, we can have a virtual Sunday school event, like one day.
Well, if y'all want to chime in at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, y'all can help sing happy birthday to my to be 14-year-old son, Vance.
Yeah,
if y'all don't have anything to do, y'all can always get on Zoom and help sing happy birthday to him. So
yeah, send us Stacey an invite.
it is an event that no one's coming to.
Do we get virtual cake?
Huh?
Virtual cake.
Virtual cake. Yeah, we'll give you some
We'll
virtual
eat
cake.
it in front of you.
Rusty, I think that's a good excuse for you to make a cake on Tuesday so we can have cake with them.
Okay, done.
Oh, you eat your cake, I'll eat my cake.
You have your cake.
Hey, Kevin, would you please close us out in prayer, please?
Sure. Dear Lord, gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, just thank you for this time and this ability to be able to just share our time together, Lord, and just talk about your word. Lord, we know we spend a lot of time talking and complaining about having to pay the taxes, Lord, but Lord, we know it's a necessity. Lord, we know that you'll put it to good use no matter how we feel about it, Lord. We know that your hand is on it. Father, we just pray for everybody that's affected by this virus, Lord. Just ask that you would heal them up and help those that are caretakers, Lord. Just bless them and keep them protected. Lord, be with us as we go through the next week, Lord, until we can meet again. In Jesus' name we pray.
Love you too.
Good to see you.